I'm just starting the live stream now. I'll confirm once it's up and running.
Thank you.
There's a slight time lag. We're ready, Chairman.
Right. Welcome to the Rochford District Council's remote meeting of the Licensing and Appeals Subcommittee, and welcome to anybody watching this via live stream. Good afternoon. My name is Councillor Phil Shaw, and I am the Chairman of the Licensing and Appeals Committee. The other members are, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Councillor Michael Hoy.
And Councillor Daniel Efty.
And we've also got a committee's legal advisor, Mr. Chris Irwin. Today's hearing is reconvened from the meeting of the 1st of the 7th, 2021. The purpose of the hearing today is to consider an application for a premises license made by Mr. Cesar Tuzolukia relating to the premises known as Vintage Off License 105 London Road, Rayleigh.
Excuse me, Chairman. Can I just say that it's not Steve Greener. We've got Clarice Brooke today as a licensing officer.
Yeah, thank you. Right, could the council licensing officer please introduce themselves?
Hi, I'm Clarice Brooke and I'm the licensing officer at Rochford District Council.
Have you anybody else with you today, and will you be calling any witnesses?
No.
Thank you. Could the applicant please introduce himself?
Good afternoon, Chair. I'm Graham Hopkins from GT Licensing Consultants. To my left is Mr. Cesar Tozlakaya, and his son Camber is to his left. Camber is here to help his dad with translation where necessary.
Thank you. And have you any other witnesses or anything you're going to call today?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Have we anybody from any responsible authorities today? No. Are there any interesting parties? No, right.
Chairman, there is. If you could allow her to introduce herself, please.
Right, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Danielle Belton, representing a number of local residents to the store. Thank you.
Thank you. And is the premises licence holder in attendance?
Chair, there is no premises licence holder. It's a new application.
Right, okay, yes, okay, just wanted to go. Right. Right, the proceedings today will follow item 3 of the agenda, and I will draw the attention to everybody to the following. 15 minutes permitted to the applicant to present their submissions, 15 minutes to any responsible authority, and 15 minutes to any interesting parties. Right, could I ask the licence officer to present their item, please?
Yeah, okay. So this is an application for a grant of a premises licence made under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003. The application was submitted to the licensing authority by GT Licensing Consultants, which is Graham Hopkins, on behalf of Mr. Tozlakaya. It refers to the premises to be known as the Vintage Off Licence 105 London Road, Rayleigh. The premises to which the application relates comprises of a retail unit with the intention to operate a one-stop convenience shop and off licence. The premise is located within a small parade of shops along London Road. The application is for the following licensable activities, which is the supply of alcohol, and that's off sales only, for Monday to Sunday from 9 AM to 11 PM. The application was assessed by Essex Police and they confirmed they have no representations. It was also assessed by the Council's Environmental Health Service and they agreed conditions with the applicant. We have received 13 representations which have raised concerns in relation to the following licensing objectives, which are prevention of crime and disorder, prevention of public nuisance. All of these can be found in Appendix E. It's proposed that the committee resolves the application with one of the following options: to grant the application subject to such conditions as are consistent with the operating schedule, modified to such extent as members consider necessary, or the promotion of the licensing objectives and any mandatory condition that must be included, or to exclude from the scope of the license any of the licensable activities to which the application relates, or to reject the application, or to adjourn the hearing to a specified date or arrange for a hearing to be held on a specified additional dates. That's the report.
Thank you. Have any of the committee members any questions they wish to ask?
I have no questions at this point, Chairman, no.
Thank you.
None at this point, Chairman.
Thank you. Have the applicants any questions they wish to ask?
No, Chair, thank you very much.
Has there anybody else any questions they wish to ask?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Right, could I ask the applicant to present their submissions, please?
Thank you, Chair. If I can start by saying that Mr. Toslakaya is a highly experienced retail operator, Chair, and also an experienced off-licence operator. He has successfully operated a convenience store and off-licence within the London Borough of Barnet in Eastcote for a number of years, where he is the DPS. No issues arose at that shop, and there were no breaches and have been no breaches of his licence. He's also successfully operated a large convenience store in Newham for over 16 years, and where we successfully obtained a new premises licence for off-sales of alcohol in April this year. Mr. Toslakaya is the DPS there. Despite the fact that that shop is in a cumulative impact zone, Mr. Toslakaya was able to demonstrate to the subcommittee at the hearing that his shop would not add to negative cumulative impact. Now, of course, this shop is not in a cumulative impact zone, and Mr. Toslakaya has operated that shop in Newham for 16 years and held a personal licence for 13 years. So he brings his very considerable experience in retail and licensed premises, Chair, to his new business at 105 London Road. Chair, members will be aware that this application under the Licensing Act must be dealt with purely on its own merits. And as I've said, it's not in a cumulative impact zone, so there's no subjection to rebuttable presumption to refuse the licence test. Before we submitted this application, as you've heard, we did discuss this application in depth with Essex Police Licensing and the Council's licensing team. You will have seen from the agenda that and you've heard from Ms. Brooke, that Mr. Toslakaya has agreed a number of conditions relating to the prevention of public nuisance with the Environmental Health Department. Chair, the hours requested for off-sales of alcohol and the proposed opening hours are the same, from 9 till 11 daily a week. And I would suggest to the panel that the hours are traditional off-licence hours and are not excessive for this location. Rochford District Council has no framework hours specified in its statement of licensing policy, but the hours are within those of most licensing authorities in the sort of South Essex, London area, where those authorities do have residential areas with framework hours. Framework hours that would apply in an area such as London Road. So we would submit to you that the hours are reasonable and sensible for this location. Mr. Toslakaya has offered a comprehensive list of conditions which were discussed with the police in his operating schedule to fully promote the licensing objectives, and they include those discussed with Essex Police, one of which was that there shall be no sale of single cans or bottles of beer. I won't go through the conditions in detail. I'm sure the panel have read them, but just to brush through them. does include a comprehensive CCTV system with the conditions that you would expect, 31-day storage. There's a night camera covering the back. There are 2 cameras covering the front of the shop that would aid the police if there were incidents on the pavement. Comprehensive staff training and refresher training, Challenge 25 proof of age scheme. I've mentioned the no single cans or bottles of beer, etc. Bottle marking and a maximum of 25% of the retail area to be used for the display of alcohol, thereby preventing the shop from becoming a bottle shop. This is actually a convenience store similar to his other shops. Sells a excuse me. So they will sell a range of foodstuffs, groceries, frozen products, soft drinks, etc. And alcohol will be that we're asking for as an addition to those, so that we can operate as the one-stop convenience shop concept, especially given the location with Rayleigh Dip station not so far up the road. And I can tell the panel that the intended customer base is local people and passing footfall. Chair, there are no representations against this application for a new premises licence from any responsible authority. That includes the police and the council's licensing team. And I would suggest to you that that's because the application hasn't caused them any concerns that problematic issues will arise if the licence is granted, or that the licensing objectives will not be fully promoted. Excuse me. There are a number of representations from local residents, and on behalf of Mr. Toslow-Kaya, I can advise the panel that via your licensing team, we did reach out to the residents who have objected via email, inviting them to engage with us and to attempt mediation. And I am grateful to Ms. Brooke for forwarding the emails on for us, and advice from her and her colleagues and from the police. I can tell the panel that disappointingly, not one of the residents who've objected engaged with us or contacted us. But I ask you to bear in mind when you're deliberating later that for his part, Mr. Toslow-Kaya has tried to engage in accordance with the Home Secretary's guidance. Before turning the chair to the other person's representations, I would like to address some points very briefly. Residents refer to there being no need for another shop. The panel will be aware that you can't legally consider that, as trade need is specifically excluded under the Licensing Act and under the guidance as a matter purely for the commercial matter, for the commercial market to decide. It is not a licensing matter. Commentary parking generally can't be considered because, again, the guidance suggests that other control regimes should not be bolted or duplicated onto licensing. Chair, other persons, the residents have commented on what happens at other premises or has happened at another premise. Again, I suggest those comments should not and cannot be considered either. This is a new application for a premises licence, and as I've already said, must be considered purely on its own merits. Mr. Toslow-Kaya cannot be held responsible for what's happened at other premises, either recently or in the past. Premises, the representations are of themselves highly speculative, and while there is, of course, case law allowing speculation to be introduced, parties are still required to provide some evidential base to support their statements in their representations. In this case, no evidential basis have been provided, no reports to the police, complaints to trading standards about underage, or to environmental health about noise. And I would remind the panel, the residents' representations are not supported by representations from the police, licensing, environmental health, trading standards, etc. And I ask you to bear that in mind in deliberation. I understand as well that the arrival off licence, which is mentioned by all the residents, or most of the residents, that on the same parade submitted a petition against our client's application, but it was rejected by the licensing authority as non-compliant. Now, I can tell you it was of some worry to us, and specifically to Mr. Toslow-Kaya, that someone, I'm not naming the shop involved, obviously, and I'm not naming individuals, but somebody from that shop visited my client's builders while the shop refurbishment was going on, was very angry at the builders and stated that they would not get a license and they would do all they could to stop one being granted. Highly a good neighbourly thing to do. I would suggest to the panel that was somewhat irresponsible. We do wonder whether, looking at some of the representation...
Mr. Hopkins, can I interject there? That is not part of the application.
No, but we wanted you to know, Chair, because the point I was going to make...
You have got later 2 or 3 minutes to sum up, but say this is not actually part of the
Fair enough.
application.
Okay, well, we won't mention that. I was just looking at the representations. That's what I was going to mention. Anyway, moving on from that.
And you have got 1 minute left.
Okay, you've got an application by a responsible operator, specific points raised by residents addressed. If you look at the conditions offered, underage sales, ASB, all addressed by the conditions we've agreed with environmental health and proposed. Sensible hours, Chair, a responsible operator, no evidence whatsoever to bear out that he's going to add to problems in the area or anything else. It's a one-stop shop. People can go in there, buy their groceries and buy some beers and a bottle of wine to take home. It's that sort of approach. Comprehensive training, as I've mentioned, no past record of Mr. Toslakaya selling to underage or to drunken persons. Concerns about children, I would submit, are addressed with the conditions you'll see on there. Ditto with antisocial behaviour. Condition on there to address that. They will go out and engage with people. If there are people loitering outside, ask them to move away and not serve them if they don't. That's the basis of our case, Chair, and we would ask you to grant the licence in full. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, there was any questions to the applicant?
Yes, Chairman, I've just got one. Again, I note the representations made, and particularly around the opening hours and the fact we don't have anything to limit them in that sense. However, I just wonder what the applicant's thoughts were concerning opening until 11 o'clock and the fact, and I take the representations made by Graham Hopkins, but the fact that the Tesco Express has had to employ security guards on a couple of nights a week, Friday and Saturdays, I believe, because of the problems they've encountered. What thoughts have you had about possible encounters like that?
Thank you, Councillor. I mean, Mr. Toslakaya, I've just had a quick word with him about that. They would consider having a security guard maybe for the later hours on a Friday and Saturday. Subject, as you'll be aware, there is a problem with SIA staff at the moment because of the situation with door supervisors, etc., etc. But yes, it's something he would think about and consider. They are proposing to have minimum staff. I understand there'll normally be about 3 staff, especially Fridays and Saturdays. And there is a new manager going in there who will become the DPS if the licence is granted, to deal specifically with that shop and concerns of residents. We wouldn't want to cut the hours back specifically at this stage.
Okay, thank you.
Daniel, have you any?
No questions. You've answered all my questions I had. Thank you.
Has the licensing officer any questions that they?
No, thank you.
Right. Interesting parties. Have you got a?
Thank you. Thank you for your time. So I'm here representing a number of residents who came via me at my then position as ward councillor, as didn't want to come forward themselves for fear of repercussion, for whatever reason they may deem that was a risk. So that's why I'm here today. Essentially, not to reiterate all of the points in the representations, because I'm sure everybody around the table has read them and understands them. But the absolute main concern from the residents that I spoke to, that I'm representing, and those that put their own letters in, is around the opening hours. People understand that you would take steps in regards to the licensing and the requirements there, the CCTV you've mentioned, the fact that you've liaised with interested parties such as the police and security and whatnot. But essentially, it all relates to the 9 AM to 11 PM, 7 days a week. Residents feel it's excessive, and ultimately it's going to lower their standard of living. There are young families that live above and around the premises. There are many types of people that live in this area. And the overriding concern is that being open 7 days a week until 11 PM will reduce the standard of living, and will cause a concern in regards to antisocial behaviour. The fact that there's a senior school opposite raises other concerns. I appreciate everything that's been said by the applicant in terms of the steps they would take, but ultimately what the residents have asked is that the panel consider, are the opening hours reasonable for the location and given the other businesses on the parade. I have mentioned the other convenience store on the strip, but I'll completely understand that's not relevant for the licensing point of view because it's a commercial interest. But ultimately, like I say, antisocial behaviour, hours of operation, noise and parking were the main overriding concerns that were replicated by multiple residents. If there could be consideration given to hours of trade, I think that would appease a lot of the residents' concerns, because 11 p.m, 7 days a week, it is late. There will be extra trade, there will be extra noise, there will be extra cars. And people have lived here for many years and are worried that their standard of life will be hindered as a result. So I would just ask the committee to consider that when making the decision. Thank you.
Any members of the committee, any questions they wish to ask?
No, Chairman.
No, Chairman, thank you.
Okay. Right, can I ask the licensing officer for a closing statement?
Sorry, Chair, could I just interject there?
Certainly.
Did you just want to ask the other parties if they had any questions for the interested party?
Oh, certainly, sorry, yes. Had anybody any questions for the interested parties?
Yes, Chair, if I may, through you. Councillor Belton mentioned, I'm sorry, I hope I got the name right, mentioned that residents were concerned about retaliation. I mean, has she got any definite evidence or any suggestions that residents would have anything to fear from Mr. Tosler-Geier? I've known him for a considerable amount of time and he's not that sort of person. So we just wonder whether that is evidence-based or just a speculative comment that they've thrown in.
The residents that I spoke to, I advised them to put their names and addresses forward so that they could be individually represented. But they all said they were concerned of fear of repercussion. They didn't give specifics, and to be honest, I didn't go into detail because I felt it would be speculative. Ultimately, I think, as per anything, sometimes people don't want to put their name forward for fear of being sort of reprimanded as a nuisance or worse. I certainly am not pointing any allegations. I'm just stating the reason why residents contacted me in my then capacity as ward councillor. Thank you.
Chair, may I just ask Councillor Belton if my advice would...
Mr. Hopkins, Mrs. Belton now, she was a councillor. She's...
Oh, sorry.
So just to clarify the position.
Sorry, Chairman, I think she is actually, sorry, Councillor Belton, I think you are a councillor still, aren't you? Although not on a district.
I'm a parish councillor, yes.
I'm a town councillor for the ward of the application, yes. Thank you.
Okay,
so may I ask,
Mr. Hopkins.
A question? Thank you. Chair, we are going to be proposing a couple of changes, but I'd like to just ask Councillor Belton, I'll still say Councillor Belton, if she thinks it would make any difference to the residents. The changes we propose, Councillor Belton, would be to reduce the Sunday hours, both trading and opening, to 9 o'clock, 2100 hours, and to employ, bearing in mind a colleague's question on the panel, to employ a security guard on Friday and Saturday nights from 8 until close. Would you think that would go towards addressing the residents' concern, those two changes?
But they would certainly help. Ultimately, it's the, shall we call them the school nights? It's the Sunday to Thursday that I think were the real concern, being open until 11 o'clock, especially through summer months. People have got their windows open, and the extra footfall, parking, sales, etc. They were concerned was going to be, like I say, detrimental to their standard of living. There's a lot of commuters that live in the area that work exceptionally early hours, and obviously school children. So whilst the 9 p.m. on a Sunday would help, what they were ultimately asking for is like the other shops in the parade, that 9 p.m. certainly on a weeknight would be adhered to. Thank you.
Right, I'll go back to any closing remarks.
No, not from me.
I think Mr. Hopkins.
Yes, Chair, is it right that Councillor Belton should go first and we go last? I don't know, maybe the legal officer can advise.
Chair, I think that's a matter for yourself, but yeah, I think that would probably make sense if the applicant went last.
Okay. Councillor Belton.
Yeah, just to summarise, ultimately, many residents I spoke to were happy and excited that there was a new shop in the parade. Nobody likes empty premises, and personally, as a town councillor and someone that's really cares about our local economy, I wish you the best with the business itself. From a resident's point of view, like I say, the main concern is around the 11 p.m. closing 7 days a week, because it really could be impactful. Thank you.
Mr. Hopkins.
Thank you, Chair.
Well, you've got up to 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you. I'll keep it as short as possible. So we're offering to reduce Sunday to opening and trading hours to 2100 hours, and a condition that there'll be a security guard Friday and Saturday from 2000 hours to close. Opening hours, of course, per se, are not licensable, and you would only be looking at the trading hours as such. We don't want to reduce the hours, Monday to Saturday for obvious reasons, new shop, viability, etc., etc. We've offered those new changes. You have an experienced operator, no evidential basis before you whatsoever to suggest that Mr. Toslukaya will not uphold the licence objectives. We say he will. Past experience in Barnet and now in Newham show that. He wants to get on well, it goes without saying, with the very residents. They'll be his customer base, we hope. So he's not going to be there to upset them, but to provide a service to them, a one-stop shop where they can go and do everything if they don't want to go to the other premises we won't talk about, the supermarket. So they'll have a choice. Based on the conditions offered, the fact you've got no representations from the police, etc., they're satisfied he's not going to undermine the objectives or cause a problem. I think the strength is in the case, and we would ask you to grant the licence. I have mentioned that he's going to put a new manager in the shop who holds a personal licence, is experienced, and will be employing 4 staff at the premises. But we will have a DPS in there that will be concentrating on that shop. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, the committee will now adjourn to consider the case, and we may request that our legal advisor attends with us for any legal advice. We will return in approximately 30 minutes for that to announce the decision. This will also be sent to you in writing. You do not have to wait, but you're welcome to do so.